Assalamualaikum and salam Sarawakku sayang to everyone. My name is Dayan Noshima binti Awang Edrus and will be with you for the Sarawakiana talk series with the title of Digital and Media Literacy, the Way Forward. Before we begin, I would like to state that some of the objectives of this program which are to foster the interest of digital media literacy among young people and to foster the interest of writing in public. Before we start, I would like to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Joseph Ramanair is a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Language and Communication Studies, UNIMAS, and researches in areas related to English language pedagogy, teacher development, and educational technology. Currently, he teaches academic English to students from the various faculties at the university and supervises students for PhD. He received his PhD in 2014 from the University of Waikato, New Zealand, MSc TESOL in 2003 from the University of Stirling, Scotland. Okay, without wasting our time, here we are with Dr. Joseph Ramanair.
Hi, and welcome to this session organized by Pustaka Negeri Sarawak. My name is Dr. Joseph Ramanair, and I am a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Language and Communication, University Malaysia Sarawak. Now, today's topic is on digital and media literacy, the way forward. I will talk about the concept of literacy and how it has changed over the years, and proceed to sharing my ideas on what digital and media literacy are all about, and including the principles and core concepts. And then we'll move on to the connection between the two types of literacy, and finally, the way forward, in which I will share some ideas on how we can take advantage of both types of literacy to our sense of purpose. That is the end of part one. This is part two of the recording. Literacy. What do we mean by literacy? Traditionally, literacy has been defined as the ability to read, write, and count. However, given the progress in human civilization, particularly in the late 20th century and the early 21st century today, we have gone through much developments and rapid progress, especially in terms of technological advances. Today, we need to go beyond the ability to read, write, and count, because we need to interpret, we need to create, we need to understand, we need to showcase, we need to identify, and most importantly, communicate in an increasingly digitalized, text-mediated, information-rich, and fast-changing world. These developments have given rise to a new form of literacy, which I will address next, and that is digital literacy. Now, when we talk about digital literacy, fundamentally, it concerns the ability to use digital devices such as our laptops, our tabs, our phones, and all kinds of devices that are at our disposal. And we also need to know how to use applications and software, for example, how to surf the net, how to download an application, how to search for an idea or search for a word, how to attach documents and pictures in an email, how to upload videos into our personal home pages or Facebook, Twitter, providing links, etc. So there is a huge description out there. There's so many descriptions out there on what digital literacy is. And I would like to offer my synthesis of it, in the sense that first we need to recognize the potential risks and benefits of using technological devices. And we need to think through our use of our technological devices and platforms to better enable us to navigate the world of, or as you can say, the cyber world in a more effective and purposeful manner. And this can happen if we are able to evaluate, create, and analyze to enable us to better communicate our intents and purposes. Now, when we deal with digital literacy, we need to recognize that there are fundamentally 4 principles. Number 1, when we are on digital platforms and we tend to read information, it can be text-based or audio or video or visual, we need to understand the messages, be it at the surface and at a deeper level. For example, in a discussion in a forum of a Facebook or in Twitter, what do we understand by what is being said and what is not being said? That needs to be skillfully played out, skillfully known, and we need to have the skills to recognize that. Secondly, digital applications, software, platforms, a lot of these devices do not work in isolation. In fact, they supplement and they complement. For example, you can use your Facebook today to share links, to upload a video, to create content and edit it and put it up there. You can attach documents to emails. You can provide links in Twitter. So clearly, there is a design of connection and supplement, and we need to know and have the skills on how we can upload, download, create, and edit so that we can fully utilize and take advantage of the potential that these digital devices and applications as well as software offer us as users. Thirdly, knowing how to share the information. Do we know what are the right platforms to promote an idea? For example, if we want to sell or promote an item, do we put it on our personal home pages? Certainly not. We want to reach a wider audience. We want to get people to know what our ideas are like, or to see the product that we have that we would like to share or we would like to sell. And you need to make these decisions by having knowledge of what particular platforms and applications can do. Finally, you, as a user of digital devices, we need to be able to access, to connect, to download and save information for later use. One important or maybe interesting thing about using technology is that it allows us to extract information, download stuff to be kept for later viewing. And this is something that will support us to understand views, will support us to go back to certain ideas that we have revisited, that we would like to visit again, so that we'll be able to use this much to our advantage to develop our own learning and our own advancement. And that is the end of part 2. This is part 3 of the recording. The next item in my sharing today is concerning media literacy. What do we mean by media literacy? In a general sense, it is the ability to identify different types of media. And fundamentally, there are 2 main types of media: print, which includes newspapers, books, brochures, and flyers, and of course, electronic or digital media, where all these forms of print media is now available online. In addition to that, you have social networking sites such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc. The ability to understand these various forms of information, the role it plays, and how to make sense of what is being presented are very important elements that we need to consider. And therefore, we need a discerning attitude. We need to know what type of media is suitable for what kind of a purpose. And this requires that we critically analyze, that we evaluate, that we create, repackage, and take action on how we can use it purposefully in our lives. Now, there are 5 core concepts that we need to understand when it comes to media literacy. Number 1, we need to recognize that all media messages are constructed. Say, for example, we take a selfie of ourselves. In our minds, we have an unwritten rule of how a selfie should be, what kind of gestures, what kind of smile, what kind of body language we should convey, because these are ideas that we have gathered through looking at other people's portfolio or looking at other people's form of selfies. And then what we do is that it ends up as our smiles are not so natural and our gestures are not our own. So we pose and display ourselves for the camera, and we don't realize that we are often contributing to the continuation of media images that do not reflect our lives in true reality and our true selves. So we need to be aware of how we imitate popular trends, popular people, and we try to make that as part of ourselves when in fact we are lying to ourselves. We need to recognize these potential risks that comes into play and recognize what influences us to do what we do through the media. And of course, related to this is the second point where we need to recognize and be able to know that media messages shape our perceptions of reality. Now, we build our personal understandings of the world and how it works based on our own observations and experiences of the media that we interact with almost on a daily basis. Now, media tends to give us a sense of reality which also could be false. Now, most of our views are therefore pre-constructed and built in. All our attitudes, our interpretations, our conclusions, our perspectives tend to be built in once. Now, do we take these opportunities, since media can do this for us, to spread positive or lesser known stories about our own realities that are not part of popular trends? Do we dare to go beyond the headlines to share our research and to share our own opinions, which can be quite objective? And what images and articles and videos do we want to promote, to share with our friends and colleagues that are truly reflective of what constitutes our reality and not merely a copy of other people's reality or popular trends? So we need to consider these questions when we talk about media literacy. And most importantly, the third point, we need to understand that the media provides one message, but it can be construed and reach different audiences with different reactions. Now, say for example, we want to post an idea online. We have an intended audience in our mind, but let's not forget there's also unintended audiences. And these unintended audiences may consist of people who are potentially our friends, employers, colleagues, or even our boyfriend or girlfriend who will eventually become our spouses one day. We all know of stories of young people or unaware adults who post content online only to get into trouble later on when it comes to their prospective employers or the law or any organization they would like to work with. So it's important that we recognize that although the message conveyed in the media is the same, it invokes and invites different feedback, different reactions. And therefore, we forget that our online content can easily go beyond the targeted audience that we have in mind. Even if we believe this is a one-to-one communication, but it can also be shared. And let's not forget that whatever we post content online, even to one person or a group of people, can be accidentally shared out or intentionally shared out. And other people may not find it very funny, may find your ideas controversial, may find that your ideas are causing a lot of uneasiness. Can you deal with the backlash? Can you deal with the criticisms? And that's something we need to think. But do not then, of course, shy away from posting content that might be divisive or controversial. There are contents that can be controversial, but we have to be selective. But most importantly, we must take the time to consider the possible interpretations and the consequences of what we want to post online on particular forms of media. Fourth, most media messages are organized to gain profit or power. We all love free stuff, free services, free applications to do this and that. Well, we often forget that all these content that we post online using these free services, so-called, are used to build a profile of us as potential customers. This is how commercial lines work. Much of what we share and post about those around us within our social network, our friends and families, can be implicated in a commercial construct. And therefore, you need to be able to understand that consent needs to be obtained if you want to do this. Now, media ownership determines not only the media we can or cannot view, but it also determines what the ordinary user of you and me can share and can say online and to whom we can say. So it pays to be careful because we need to know the hidden powers behind the media that we are using. Finally, media offers embedded values and points of view, like the example of the selfie earlier, only more beyond this and extensive. When we post vacation photos, everybody likes to go for a holiday, somewhere on a beach or by a riverside or in a certain home or even shopping for that matter. And these are images of our less than routine lives. And we would like to share it online. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are portraying and constructing a message of what we feel is good, correct, valuable, and positive in the world. And what are the unstated messages that we are sending about wealth and the opportunity that are there for some and not for others? We need to think about that. Consider using the media to edit out what is undesirable about our world and our lives and feature only what is the most photogenic and what appeals to a general sense. So avoid putting on excessive shows is also being part of media literacy. And that ends part 3. This is part 4 of the sharing. Having established what digital literacy and media literacy are, we need to ask ourselves the question, is there a connection between the two? For one, digital literacy is about the personal, technological, and intellectual skills that are needed to live in a digital society, whereas media literacy concerns the need to be critically engaged consumers of media. Now, put together, digital literacy is part of media literacy, and they are both included in the idea of information literacy, which is the ability to effectively find, identify, evaluate, and use information in purposeful ways. And these skills involve critical thinking. Now, the essence of the differences and similarities between digital and media literacy can be summarized as follows. I will show you a diagram which covers this as well. Now, if we look at this diagram provided by Hobbs in 2018 in an article published, Media and Meaning Making in the Fake News Age, we find that there are elements in digital literacy and media literacy that when it comes together contributes to 4 major big points. Number 1, the connection between digital and media literacy requires that we critically analyze messages that are presented to us, and we need to evaluate in terms of how true it is, whether it is up to date, whether it's telling us the objective aspects of a certain issue. Now, we also need to understand that digital literacy plays a very important role because we need to use those skills to recognize what media is suitable for us to create as an avenue for self-expression, to communicate with our audience, and to advocate or to support or oppose a certain or a particular movement. Thirdly, we need to be aware of the interpretation processes at work in the sharing of meaning. How is meaning shared? How is that meaning interpreted? It's something that falls under both media and digital literacy. And the most important thing is the balancing of the benefits and risks of using media content in socially responsible ways. So there is also a need for balance between both digital and media literacy in the sense that we use our digital literacy to recognize the kinds of media and try and look and find for that balance. Now, what does this all mean? This certainly, for one, highlights essential competencies that we need in terms of our digital and media literacy. First, we need to have access, as I mentioned earlier. We need to find, and we must know how to find, and use media and technological tools at our disposal skillfully, and share only appropriate and relevant information with others. Secondly, we need to take steps to analyze and evaluate the messages that come through to us. We need to think about the quality. We need to think about how credible they are, what kind of sources is it coming from, whose point of view is it supporting or opposing, and consider the potential effects it has on intended audience or the consequences of the messages if you were to put it out online. Thirdly, we need to learn how to create, and this is a competency we need. Now, we need to compose, we need to generate content, and this requires that we are creative and have confidence in the expressions of ourselves and of our work. And how do we do this is when we are aware of our purpose, our audience, intended and unintended, and how do we compose this using techniques that is very much, or techniques that are very much related to our digital skills. Fourthly, we need to take a step back and reflect. What about our social responsibility? What about our ethical principles, our own identity, our lived experience, our communication, our behavior and conduct? Are we trying to propagate a false sense of reality? And finally, given all these essential competencies, we can now then act. Working individually, we work collaboratively, we share knowledge, most importantly, address and solve problems within our family, our workplace, our community, and participate meaningfully as a community at all levels, be it local, district, national, and international levels. And why are these important? Because number one, more jobs these days require high-level skills, and these include the ability to access information, the ability to solve problems, the ability to work collaboratively, and we need skills to support us in that. Now, these skills, along with, of course, communication skills, effective communication skills, along with analyzing data and evidence, are highly relevant in today's workplace and in our community. And today, the ability to be a knowledge worker is fundamental to any country's socio-economic. But today's citizens need training if they are going to be tomorrow's knowledge workers. Now, this is part 5 of the recording. Now that we have established the connection between digital literacy and media literacy, let's now move on to where shall we go from here? What do we do with the Okay, this is the start of the recording for the first question. Right. Now we have a question here, and the question sounds like this. How can we develop critical thinking? Well, critical thinking is a very necessary element in our lives, and it's not something that you can develop overnight. It takes time, it takes space, and development of critical thinking requires that you read through, question, ask yourself the kinds of information that you're presented with. Are you actually believing in this? Is this information really true? Is this too good to be true? These are questions you need to ask, and this requires that you have a critical mind. Now, in the field of questioning, we normally have the 5 W and 1 H, the what, the why, the where, the who, the when, and the how. So ask yourself this question when you get a piece of media information. How did it arrive here? What is this all about? But most importantly, I find on a personal basis that when you do comparisons between the same type of message, but from different variety or from a variety of perspectives, you will find that it gives you puzzle pieces to a jigsaw. And when you put them together, this is question number 2. Now we have another question here. How do we create a purpose for using social media? I think the issue of purpose here has to be taken from the perspective of our daily lives. When we wake up in the morning to the time that we go to bed, have we fulfilled our purpose on a daily basis? We have short-term purposes, we have long-term purposes. We need to ask ourselves, where will we be in the year? What do we hope to achieve in 6 months? What do we hope to achieve in 5 years? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. So how do you create a purpose for using social media? Number one, you need to know why you need to use social media. Secondly, you need to ask yourself, so we need to ask ourselves more like it, on what media is suitable, or what form of the medium is suitable to address what we want to do with it. Say, for example, you would like to promote an idea or sell an item that you have just newly created, and it's a certain dish or a certain food. You may first of all start by your circle of friends, and Facebook is quite an interesting platform for this because it tells you and gives you friends of friends and circles of friends, and this is a perfect start. Of course, you need to have a purpose in a sense that, okay, I want to put this across, this is what I want to do. But then again, you've got to ask yourself, when you look at this purpose, is this purpose beneficial? Am I offering something that is of added value to a discussion online? Or do I just want to sit and watch and read what everybody says? That's another example. Okay, so when you want to create a purpose, it comes from you. Are you genuine? Is your purpose a socially responsible, ethical one? Or is your purpose something of which you want to keep up with the latest and you want to be first? Or you want to flaunt your wealth and your intelligence, which may not be, accepted by many as something acceptable for that matter. This is the recording for question number 3. How about us who have no or limited access to internet? Yes, I think there is a growing digital divide between those who have and who do not have. But I find that this gap is slowly and surely being narrowed. But this does not mean that you don't need the literacy that is required to understand the use of the digital and also the media. Now, one important or interesting approach in digital and media literacy is that the devices that we have in our hands that we get access to are becoming smaller and smaller and least expensive. In fact, in many remote areas, the mobile phone is far more effective as a tool than is a laptop, because it's mobile, it's easy to be carried around. And from these, we need to learn how to operate it. If we look at our smartphones, for example, a phone is only smart because we are. And I'm sure you wouldn't use even 50% of the applications in your smartphone. The most we would use is to surf the net, to go on WhatsApp, perhaps keep a calendar or an alarm clock or a reminder for ourselves in our calendar. So the need to be digitally literate is increasing every day and on a daily basis. And we need to think forward, because down the road, the skill of digital literacy or the digital skills that are required of us becomes more complex, although it becomes easier. So we've got to learn how to adapt ourselves. And it is a question of adapting and adopting within our times. There is no such thing as, because it's not there, you don't learn. No, we need to learn because it's not there and because it's going to be our future. We don't know what the future is like. In fact, we can't even tell what is going to happen in the next few days. We live in very uncertain times, and these are an opportunity. And these are times for an opportunity for us to make our lives better, to increase our skills and enhance it for the betterment of society. Thank you for that question. Okay, done.
Thank you to Dr. Joseph Ramanair for the interesting and fruitful presentation on the topic of digital and media literacy, the way forward. This talk addresses the intersection between both types of literacy and underscores the need for critical thinking, which requires the transformation of the mind and the challenges of such transformation when managing both types of literacy. Besides that, it also gives some practical recommendations for the way forward in mitigating the challenges in the field and mastering digital and media literacy to serve purposeful needs. Thank you once again to Dr. Joseph Ramanair for the talks. Before we end, don't forget to follow Pustaka Negeri Sarawak social media on the program for Sarawak Authors Festival. These programs are open to all and free. That's all from us today. Hopefully, what is presented can provide information and knowledge to all of us. Stay healthy, keep social distancing. Assalamualaikum and see you again.